Alrighty, welcome back, you maple potheads. You were here with Martin Mooseberg. Well, what are you doing in Canada? I'm here in Newfoundland and Golden Retriever. It's a little bit chilly, but I thought I would regale you with my thoughts on this recent election. If you do recall, I made a video some time before on Andrew Shearer, and I talked about essentially what was going to happen in this very balloting process. People didn't want to believe me, but, whatever. I'm not going to say it was terribly hard to predict, but nonetheless, we should have a discussion. So I'm going to start from the bottom in terms of performance. We begin with the PPC, a pretty terrible name, I think, if you're trying to advance a nationalist or libertarian message personally, but that is just as it is. Maxime Bernier, I don't know how many people ever took him seriously, particularly after the whole thing when he was foreign minister and he left the classified documents at his girlfriend's house and she was tied to a motorcycle gang. Maybe it was exaggerated, but again, I don't know how many people thought he was the real deal. And he faced the Herculean task of trying to introduce libertarianism and a proper right wing to Canada. Canada has never had a national right-wing government, at least since Confederation. Now you guys are going to be like, yeah, but what about John Diefenbaker? John Diefenbaker was a big social justice warrior on a lot of issues. He's definitely not a right-winger. Joe Clark wasn't in power long enough to even cuck out. Mulroney was the typical free trade, low taxes, social moderate, don't change anything. Kimmy Campbell, a feminist, and then pretty much every political figure in the last 20 or 30 years has been for mass immigration. Stephen Harper, he united the conservative different factions, but what happened was, in order to play it safe and win politically, he didn't even cut government spending significantly. So people consider Harper a disappointment, and I certainly agree with them. The only decent political leaders in the last 20, 30 years, I would say, would be Stockwell Day and Preston Manning, the ones that were actually given somewhat of a spotlight. But so we have this election. Not surprisingly, the PPC did horribly. I mean, where exactly are you going to win? You might have won on a provincial level in Saskatchewan or Alberta, potentially British Columbia, but probably not because there's a lot of Chinese there. Ontario, there's a bunch of migrants, Indians, whatnot. Anti-mass immigration is probably not going to be an effective message. They could have won, of course, provincially in Quebec potentially. But, he wanted to do it on the national level, and that wasn't going to fly very well. So, next on the list, you got Elizabeth May. I had no idea that our country here in Canada, we have a special refugee asylum program for American drunks, but I guess she's kind of popular, so she did better. Still irrelevant, though, in the grand scheme of things. Then, of course, we have the indomitable Jagmeet Singh. And there's something really amusing about a person who wears the traditional beard, turban, carries around a religious dagger, but is Mr. Social Justice Warrior, Social Democrat. I find that hilarious. The great thing about Canada is you can look however you want. Okay, so naturally, if you're a progressive and you're trying to move forward, why would you be holding on to this 1,000-year-old tradition or whatever? I don't know. I don't even know if it's thousands of years old. You have to quiz me on that or educate me. Sorry, I'm very ignorant, I'm sure. Right? I just think it's a huge irony of sorts. But as I predicted, I said this very clearly. I said Jagmeet Singh will not do well in Quebec, and I was absolutely correct. He got wiped out. The New Democrats have been reduced, not quite to where they were early 2000s, but they've certainly lost a lot of seats, although he might have a shot because I think Justin Trudeau is looking for a manly-looking guy to be his deputy prime minister. So maybe Trudeau could be like the prime power bottom or something like that. I don't know if that's the proper term. I'm kind of ignorant of this stuff. And so after that, we have the Bloc Québécois. Now, they said it performed better because of the CAQ winning the provincial election last year. And the CAQ is kind of a moderate pro-autonomy. It's not exactly outright nationalist, which is why I don't think that necessarily means they're going to be moving towards independence. In fact, the provincial Parti Québécois has been getting slaughtered. So unless the CAQ starts advocating a referendum, I'm not sure how far it's going to advance. I really believe that the Bloc comes back every time. It's kind of just to, we will never be English Canada. Remember the Alamo. Wait, what? Yeah, I don't know how much relevance they play because they don't really like participating in the national government, so I guess they just kind of sit there. I'm all for them, by the way. Let them go independent. I really don't care. Let them just have their own thing. Honestly, Quebec managing its own affairs and borders would probably be better for maintaining its culture. Most of English Canada, especially Ontario and the Atlantic Canada, is pretty screwed up in that regard. So, you know, you give a little, you take a little. And then the Right Honorable Andrew Shearer. Now, I said before, this dude was like has the face of the kid who gets caught on a school night under the covers eating goober grape jelly. I mean, just reminds me of almost Tim Kaine from the United States. If you take out all the helium, kind of the boring suburban dad who never stands up for himself, just goes with the flow. And that's honestly the fundamental problem. It's the fact that people had reason to not vote for Justin Trudeau because of all the scandals and whatnot, but they didn't have reasons to vote for Andrew Scheer. It was kind of like the 2012 election. Not everyone liked Obama, but they had no motivation to cast their ballots for Romney. And that's the problem. These so-called right-wingers launching campaigns of, oh, I'm just going to get the economy moving again, I'll cut taxes, and they're afraid of touching anything else. Of course, with Scheer, it doesn't help when in a debate. I watched some of the leaders' debates, and he's like going after Trudeau. I mean, you went after and you attacked these strong women. It's like, dude, even the most feminist woman does not respect that, particularly from a right-wing guy. Stop trying to out-feminist Justin Trudeau. You're not going to be successful. It just makes you look, submissive and whatnot. So it was not surprising to me. Yeah, they gained seats, but they didn't even get to the point where they could seriously impede Trudeau's objectives, because more than likely Trudeau's now going to ally with the NDP. So I don't see there being a huge impediment to what Trudeau's trying to do. Although maybe if he screws up enough, the NDP will withdraw support. We'll see. Going beyond that, of course, then you've got, Justin. Apparently, Houston may in fact be able to live up to his father Pierre's political legacy. Maybe he'll last that long. You never know. In 4 years, people will probably be in love with him again. So he didn't have to do much. He just essentially had to continue smiling, being the nice guy, being left-wing enough, but also selling out to certain corporations, selling out to the migration lobby, and he would probably win re-election. At least with the minority government, yeah, but he can get support from the NDP, so not much has really changed dramatically in Canada. And this is something to where I don't see a right wing emerging because, as I noted before, there's a huge migrant community. Canada tends to be left-wing to begin with. So unless you're talking about on the provincial level, like I said, Quebec, that's why I support Quebec going independent, I don't imagine that's going to occur. Yeah, Alberta, whatever, they might elect right-wing governments, but that doesn't matter if you can't control migration policy. So essentially, Canada's going to continue being the pro-diversity, welcome everyone, welcome the refugees. We've got great welfare. So, just something to talk about. Like I said, it's not that difficult to predict the outcome of Canadian elections. You just have to kind of follow where the general trends are. I guess this is the big issue was climate change. And so the parties that advocated climate change, for the most part, came out on top. Even the conservatives are not really they're not much different from the liberals. They might not support the carbon tax, but there isn't a huge chasm between them when it comes to, oh my God, it's the end of the world.